Imam Ibn al-Qayyim in Tuhfat al-Mawdud bi Ahkam al-Mawlud, his important work on various rulings related to newborn children, under a section entitled Useful Ideas on Raising a Child which will lead to advantageous outcomes in adulthood, speaks on developing a child's character and the importance of paying much attention to it while they are still young. He starts off by explaining how the traits that you accustom your child to during infancy influences his or her development. He mentions the detriment of allowing them to develop bad traits such as a short temper, recklessness, greed, and a propensity for violence, and how difficult it is to rid the child of such traits if they are allowed to become second nature, and that the reason why most people are depraved is because of their upbringing that they received while growing up. He then mentions that a child should be kept away from certain settings once he or she reaches the age of discernment, which is usually after the child completes the 7th year going into the 8th. He stresses the importance of keeping a child at this age away from idle amusements, vain activities, singing and music, and that the child should be prevented from hearing obscene language, as well as heretical ideas and fallacies. This is because it will be difficult to rid the child of these bad habits if he grows up indulging in such things. They will become part of his personality, and therefore changing them will require a complete change of personality, and this is an extremely hard thing for a person to do. He also mentions the importance of teaching your child charity and generosity. He stresses the importance of preventing your child from taking things from other people so that he does not get used to doing it and eventually become a person who always takes things from others rather than a person who gives. You should accustom your child to being generous and giving charity, and when you want to give something away, you should give it to your child to give away so that he experiences the joy of giving things to others. He talks about preventing your child from lying and cheating others. He says that you should protect him from these traits more than you'd protect him from a deadly poisonous substance. If a child becomes used to lying and cheating, it will ruin his prospects for happiness and prosperity in this life and the next. He talks about the importance of hard work and developing this ethic in your child. You should prevent your child from being lazy and idle. You should prevent him from inactivity, and you shouldn't allow him to be too comfortable. Rather, you should foster in him the opposites of these traits. When he does need rest, you should only allow his rest to involve things that will allow him to recover mentally and physically in preparation for resuming his work. Laziness and idleness only lead to regret and bad consequences. Hard work and effort, on the other hand, have admirable consequences, whether in this life or the next, or both. This is why people who indulge in the most leisure are the most stressed, while the people who exert the most effort are the most composed. Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah show him mercy, then quotes Yahya ibn Abi Kathir, who famously said, "Knowledge cannot be obtained in comfort." Imam Ibn al-Qayyim then mentions that you should accustom your child to being awake during the final hours of the night when bounties and treasures are being distributed. This is, of course, when Allah Azza wa Jal descends to the first heaven and asks, "Who will call upon me so that I may answer him? Who will ask me for something so that I may give it to him? Who will ask me for forgiveness so that I may forgive him?" And this is narrated by al-Bukhari and Muslim through Abu Hurairah, may Allah be pleased with him. The Imam mentions how some people receive a lot of bounty, while others receive only a little, while others receive nothing at all. Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah show him mercy, then talks about protecting your child from excessiveness and indulgence. He tells us that we should prevent our children from overeating, talkativeness, sleeping too much, and mixing too much with others, as well as mixing with just anyone. Excesses such as these and others are the breeding ground of failure and lead to deprivation of the good things of this life and the next. We must keep our children away from harmful urges. Consuming things that are impermissible, even in the smallest amounts, is harmful, but so also is overconsumption of things that are permissible. This is true whether those things are carnal in nature, such as food, drink, and intercourse, or some other type of indulgence. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim explains how many a parent, while believing that he is honoring his child and being a good parent, is actually turning him into a wretched person by allowing him to freely indulge his desires without any discipline. Sometimes it's this severe form of neglect alone, and sometimes it's coupled with facilitating the child with the means to explore these urges. So while the parent thinks that he is being kind and generous, he's actually oppressing his child and depriving him, because it is not mercy for someone to allow or help someone towards their destruction. And this is a very important concept for all of us with loved ones, and especially children, to understand. Ibn al-Qayyim says that as a result of these actions on the part of these parents, they fail to gain any value from their children, while at the same time, the child does not benefit himself either. When you really think about it, he says, the corruption found in children is caused by their parents. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah show him mercy, also talks about the importance of protecting a child's mind and intellect from things that may weaken or corrupt them. These include intoxicants and associating with the wrong people. Corruption of the mind and corruption of one's intellect and their faculties of discernment are a source of utter ruin. Intoxicants muddle the senses, while associating with the wrong company can corrupt the ability to process information and process the truth properly by making fallacies seem like sound arguments. He stresses here again the detrimental effects of parental neglect and the way some parents don't seem to care much about leaving their children exposed to things that have a high risk of destroying them. He mentions how most parents unwittingly have an attitude towards their children that is worse than the attitude one would take with one's worst enemy. Because of this, they deny their children the ability to gain prosperity in this life and the next, while leading them towards destruction in this life and the next instead. This is a direct result of the parents' neglect of their own personal duties towards Allah, among which are gaining beneficial and practical religious knowledge and performing mandatory acts of worship. As punishment for this, they are prevented from gaining any value from their children. He then mentions the importance of keeping your child away from impermissible things in general, but mentions certain things such as wearing silk for a boy, which he says will feminize him, and also sodomy, drinking, lying, and stealing. While silk is permissible for females, the Prophet ﷺ prohibited it for males. He explains that allowing children to do things that are normally impermissible for adults is wrong, because even though a child is not accountable, the parent is accountable and is not allowed to enable his child to do things that are impermissible, because it will become a habit that is difficult to get rid of later. This is the most accurate opinion, he states. He then mentions why those who see otherwise are wrong. The argument, he explains, that a child wearing silk, for example, is not wrong because he lacks accountability, just like an animal, is faulty reasoning, and the worst example of deductive reasoning there is. This is because even though a toddler at that stage may, like an animal, be unaccountable for his actions, and like an animal, he will become accountable later and must therefore be primed and prepared for accountability. This is why a child is not allowed to pray without purification, even while being a child, and is not allowed to pray naked or with physical impurities on his person. Similarly, he isn't allowed to drink, gamble, or engage in sodomy before he becomes accountable, just like he won't be when he becomes an adult. Finally, Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah show him abundant mercy, teaches us how to direct our children with respect to work and career choice. Due attention, he explains, must be paid to his disposition and predisposition for certain types of work. The child is then encouraged to pursue the work that he seems predisposed to as a profession. He certainly shouldn't be forced to do impermissible work, and he should not be forced to do work that he has no affinity for, because it is likely that he will not succeed in it, and at the same time will lose out on the profession that he would have been good at. Ibn al-Qayyim says, that if the parent sees that his child shows good understanding, has a good grasp on things and a strong memory, he should steer him towards learning the religion, because these traits show his readiness for it and that he will respond well to it. Teaching him early will allow the knowledge to be rooted firmly in his heart and grow with him. And this is interesting because it is in contrast to what most people do these days, where they steer intelligent children towards worldly sciences and trades, while they leave those of lesser academic ability, so to speak, to pursue theological studies. This is doing things the wrong way around. We need scholars of religious knowledge who are smart and have sharp understanding, because our religion is our most important occupation and the reason why we exist. And we need people who can understand and deduce rulings, refute fallacies, and teach coherently while understanding the numerous Islamic sciences and how they intertwine with one another. Ibn al-Qayyim then says that if the child has little or no affinity for academics, but instead seems predisposed to archery, spear training, horsemanship, and so on, and displays the kind of physical prowess that is needed for these endeavors and armed combat, he should be steered towards cavalry training. In other words, joining the army. This will be better for him and more useful for the Muslim community at large. He then mentions that if the child does not show affinity for academic learning or cavalry training, but instead seems interested in a trade, the parent should direct his energy towards that, as long as it is permitted by Islam and useful to society. These could be professions like being a doctor or an engineer, but also professions like carpentry or being a butcher or a blacksmith and so on, because all of these professions are needed and useful to society. Let your child do that which he has affinity for, rather than force him towards careers that you feel are glamorous or you feel have a lot of financial reward. The important thing is that he is happy and successful while also being useful to society. Ibn al-Qayyim, may Allah show him mercy, ends this section by stressing the importance of teaching our children, before steering them towards their worldly pursuits, the knowledge that they need to practice their faith, which is something easy for everyone to do. Allah has made it easy this way so that His case may be established against His servants, and He, of course, has the greatest case against them, just as they also owe Him all the abundant blessings that they enjoy. And Allah knows best.